Hey guys, Mel the Train Shooter here with another sort of snowy, whitey tutorial for you. Doesn't it look very white? Yeah, if one more person comes into my house and says, "Ooh, Christmas decorations," I'm gonna hit them. I really am. Okay, what am I doing here is I'm playing around with the foreground basing stuff, but I want to be clear that this is another one of those sort of tutorials where it's about the techniques, not so much the basing products. Yeah, but I'll be having a look at them as we go. It's an opportunity to show you something. Okay, and this is a little something to make your snow sort of foliage and ground look a little bit more realistic. Now, yeah, straight off, yeah, when we look at war games tables that are often snowy tables, yeah, they're quite often literally a whiteout, yeah, like they're in the Arctic, etc. And to be truthful, yeah, anyone who's spent any real time in a wood when it's snowing, such as, you know, the Black Forest in Germany in winter, yeah, will tell you it's nothing like that. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of contrast, there is a lot of colour, and what I want to do is show you two quick techniques, yeah, to sort of get that effect in with your war games terrain. Now, as I said, yeah, we are using foreground stuff here, but you can use these techniques with anything. But let me show you what I've got. Okay, I've got a bit of the stuff off the trees. Yeah, I'll be using this clump foliage because there's some nice dark bits in that, and I want dark because typically when it snows everything gets very damp, yeah, and I'll explain more as we go. Yeah, on top of that I've got their, what do you call it, snow flock. Yeah, they do snow static grass, which I don't know of anyone else who does this, yeah, but it is essentially incredibly fine static grass. I mean, there you go, yeah, to replicate the snow. And then what I've also got, okay, is their frosted ground static grass. Okay, and this is standard static grass, as you can see, mixed with the snow stuff. I mean, it's clear to see. Now, to sort of replicate this, yeah, obviously you could use whatever snow flock you're using from whatever manufacturer, and you could mix it with whatever shade you wanted. Yeah, it's just playing around. I do think if I bring that up, yeah, in the case of frosted ground, static grass does work quite well with that. It gets that, I think, because it's so fine. So to replicate this with other flocks, you know, go for the fine stuff. But it's doable. Certainly doable. Right, what techniques are we going to do? Well, there's two I want to show you, okay, and they're about breaking up the whiteness. Now, first off, yeah, when you have a tree such as these, and these are all foreground bases, they've been filled up, well, basing rendered up and painted white, yeah, an almighty task considering that the boards are originally that colour, yeah, but we got it, airbrush one out, and, you know, a good old house brush, yeah. So we've got that. Now what we're going to be doing, yeah, is when it snows, okay, snow comes down, it falls on the tree, yeah, but the tree protects the ground underneath. So typically under the trees you don't get as much snowfall. Certainly not as thick as when it's away from the tree, because you might get snow that gets blown in, you might get frost from how cold it is, but generally, yeah, it's protected. Now there is another little technique that you can do that I'm not going to show because it's not really suitable on these movable disc things, but you can actually make a little lump with modelling putty, milli put, DAS modelling putty, and a filler, even quite thick filler, yeah. And if you make a little ridge, you get that where all the snow falls off, builds up and makes a little ridge that protects on the inside. So what I'm going to be doing with these trees is when we come to put the flock on, I'm going to be using the frosty ground flock, yeah, in the centre, and the snow flock essentially around the edge to replicate that, and that will break up the ground. Okay, but before we do that, we've got to what do you call it? We've got to take some of this clump foliage, okay, and glue it on, and I'm going to use hot glue for that. PVA for the static grass, hot glue for the clump foliage. Yeah. So, yeah, if I bring that up, yeah, clump foliage, yeah, plain and simple. Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to stick this onto the base before we put our static grass on, and then when we put our PVA glue down, yeah, we're going to put it on top, yeah, of the clumps, and put the static grass on top. And what that gives you is, you know, when it's really snowing, you see bushes that are covered with snow, but because it's not a mound of snow, they're caught on the leaves, you get that dark gap, and it's very dark because the snow cuts out all the shade, and it gives you that contrast. You know, that's why they camouflage tanks, okay, white and black. They don't just paint them white. You know, if you look at modern camouflage, yeah, A lot of the Arctic camouflage and a lot of the cold weather camouflage has black in it because this is quite common. You can see on the trees the effect itself. You can see how the high contrast gaps, I'm just looking in the camera as I'm doing this, and you know, this highlights it exactly. Snow falls on the top, leaves darkness underneath. So we're going to use the clump foliage to replicate that. So I think the best thing we can do, okay, is I'm going to get set up and then we'll do a bit of a fast forward so you can watch me sort of do it, and then we'll bring it back at the end, because you don't really need me telling you get your hot glue, stick it there, do you? Yeah, you've got the basic ideas. We're going to use the frosty ground under the trees, yeah, we're going to watch, we're going to use clump foliage, and it's all going to be gravy. Right, I'll see you shortly, guys. So there we have it, guys. It's not quite dry yet, okay, but two simple effects that really, really do break up your bases. Now, the clump foliage I'm incredibly happy with, you know, that's turned out exactly how I want. Obviously, you can, once this is dry, if you want a thicker look to it, you can just let it dry, go in with a little bit more PVA, paint that on, put some more flock on, or even, yeah, like I've done with the top of these, okay, going just with some white acrylic paint and just paint that on. See? Let me bring that in for you. See the top there? That's paint. Okay, so you could do that on the clump foliage. With regards to the frosted ground, I think it'd do really well for for open ground, but I think in this case, if I bring it up, it's a little bit too light for my liking. Yeah, because generally where you have lots of snow, you have lots of water and things are damp. Yeah. So I think I'd darken that up with a darker static grass, but the technique works. That idea of putting the flock around the edge of the tree, yeah, and then hiding, sort of having the more exposed frosted ground underneath. Now let me see if I can lift these up so you can get a better look. Yeah, but overall, look at that. Now I'll have to face up to the fact that anyone who walks into this house is going to go, ooh, look at the Christmas decorations, and I'm going to hit them. But there's not much I can do about that right now. So there you are, there's the backside, because we like looking at backsides. For now. Okay guys, as always, yeah, obviously this is because I'm finishing off these foreground things and these heading to eBay and all that malarkey and the church is going on. Yeah, but I thought you'd really appreciate, you know, a couple of little tips on sort of changing the ground of your snowy environments, yeah, to make it a little bit more realistic and to break up that. I mean, sometimes I look at snowboards and I honestly feel like I'm getting snow blindness looking off them, they're that white. So simple tips to just break it up and make it look a little bit more realistic. Okay guys, as always, yeah, like it if you've liked it. If you've got any comments on this, any other suggestions to work with this, throw it in the comments, guys. You know I love my comments, you know I always answer my comments. Yeah, so get them in there, suggestions, questions, and anything else, throw them in the comments. Obviously share it if you know someone who's watching it, who'll find it useful, who's building some snowy stuff right now, get them doing it. And then finally, obviously, if you like what I like, guys, yeah, there's the Patreon link, but there's no pressure to do that, yeah, but it does help. Anyway, guys, I'm going to crack on with the rest of these bases and that sort of stuff, so expect a couple more videos coming soon, but you'll see these on Facebook pretty soon. All the best, yeah? Ta-ra.